Hey there, friend, and welcome back to another episode of Artworks for Teachers. I'm your host, Susan Riley, and today I am thrilled to bring you a wonderful keynote speaker and an amazing friend and guest, Clint Pulver. So, Clint, if you are not familiar with his work, is an Emmy-winning motivational keynote speaker, author, musician, and workforce expert. He's also known as the undercover millennial. And I'm bringing him on the show today to talk about his book, I Love It Here. Now, this book was a labor of love for Clint. He spent 4 years in the research and production of this book. He and I dig into this quite a bit. And the book itself is really about why people stay in a workplace environment. And so he interviewed teachers. He also interviewed a lot of other businesses and lots of business locations as well. But there are lots of common threads as to why people stay. And not only why they stay, but why those places help them thrive outside of the work that they're doing. And so this is really fascinating to me, particularly because we're seeing such a shortage of teachers and the exodus of teachers right now over the last 3 years. We know this from the research. It's not just something that is being talked about on social media. It's happening. We've seen the data that almost 50% of the teacher workforce has left in the last 3 years. And so I wanted to bring Clint on to talk about why this happens, what we can do about it, and what the research says causes it and how we can turn it around. And it's what the good news is that we can absolutely turn it around. What's also fascinating about Clint's story is that Clint's life was turned around by a teacher in the 5th grade who put a pair of drumsticks in his hand. Clint's background is in music, and he's a firm believer in the power of creativity and the arts in impacting the lives of everyone around us. So I'm excited to introduce you to Clint and to his new book, I Love It Here. I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. All right, well, welcome, Clint. I'm so glad you could join us today.
I'm honored to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, of course. So could you please give us a little bit of background about yourself, a little overview, and why you've been called the undercover millennial?
Yeah, so my name is Clint Pulver. I'm a professional keynote speaker and travel all over the world training educators and speaking to districts and talking to principals and administration on how to create an organization that students and teachers never want to leave. And it's founded upon a 6.5-year study that was called the Undercover Millennial Program, where I would go undercover into schools and organizations as businesses as someone who was looking for a job. And we found the hidden truths behind why certain teachers stayed in districts for 20 years and certain teachers only stayed in districts for only 2 months. And the differences behind how really great leaders and great educators were creating an organization, a culture where students and teachers didn't just survive in education, but they could actually thrive.
Amazing, amazing. And in this episode, we're actually going to be talking about your book, I Love It Here, how great leaders create organizations there people never want to leave. But I want to back up about the research that you did as an undercover millennial. So when you were in this kind of aspect of working with all of these different organizations, what was some of the findings that surprised you the most?
Yeah, I think that really the power of a moment, the
Mm,
power of connection. If we focus on just for a minute the student teacher connection, I mean, my life was forever changed because a teacher created a moment for me as a young child with a pair of drumsticks that changed the course of everything for me. I
mm,
was the kid that always had a hard time sitting still and was constantly in trouble, just could not sit, just couldn't sit still. And everybody saw the issue. They saw a limitation. And it took one educator who said, "No, I don't think he's a problem. I just think he's a drummer." And that was Mr. Jensen, my 5th grade teacher. And he told me to stay after class, and he put my very first pair of drumsticks in my hands and changed my life. And
wow.
in our research, that the first and pivotal point is kids never really talked about curriculum. That teachers never talked about really even the theme of the year or the different teaching strategies. What they remember are the
Mhm.
moments when somebody got to the part about them, the moments where an administrator communicated their potential and their worth. For a student, the moment when a teacher decided to see what was right in them instead of seeing what was wrong, and truly became an advocate in their life, not just someone who was trying to develop them through curriculum or to perform at a certain level. Advocacy versus development, and the moments that educators created in the lives of students.
Mm. It's so powerful. And we talk a lot on the show about the power of being seen and
Mhm.
heard. And I think you speak to that so beautifully. Um, in my research for this episode, I was so excited to see your background as a professional drummer, that from that moment of your teacher identifying you as, as seeing that potential in you as a drummer, that you moved into being a professional drummer. Can you share a little bit about how that happened and maybe some of your experiences in that realm?
Yeah, so music has been a massive part of my life, and all of it stems back to that one moment when an educator uh, changed my life with a pair of drumsticks. God, it's been 25 years now that I've played the drums professionally, and I've toured and recorded all over the world. I've been on America's Got Talent. I was the head coach for the Utah Jazz Drum Line. I coached at Utah Valley University, the Green Man Group. Um, have been on again America's Got Talent. I played with the drums with Tim McGraw, Carrie Underwood. My whole
Mhm.
college education was paid for because of scholarships, music scholarships.
Mhm.
And I don't say all of that to go, oh, wow, good for you, Clint. But I say all of that to go, because of one person,
Mhm.
because of an educator who decided to see what was right and
Yeah.
created a moment that allowed me to live a better story. And I'll never forget him for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're an organization who believes in the power of the arts, that that creativity and the arts have the power to unlock the potential of so many students. How did music do that for you as a student and as a human?
Yeah, the ability to just express through, nonverbal communication. I mean, the drums are very loud, right? They definitely make noise, but it's a story. Even, today, what I do is I travel around and speak to educators and speak to events and conferences. I'm soloing. I'm doing solo performances. I'm not touring with a group. I'm not playing with a band. And so the expression of being a solo artist on a drum set, I believe, is the ultimate form of storytelling in
Mhm.
percussion, because you take people on a ride, and it gives me the ability to express so much of who I am through music in an engaging way, to where I'm not saying a word, but I've got an audience of 2,000 to Jesus. We've got an event coming up where there's going to be 8,000 people in the audience, and they're right there with me. They're feeling it. They're on the journey to the dynamics of the highs and the lows, to my facial expressions. Drumming requires so much. It requires all the mental capacity, the ambidextrous movement between your hands and your feet, the interdependence that's required, and so much of that, I think, has translated even to other parts of my life. I fly helicopters, and helicopters require that interdependence and that ability to move all of your limbs at different times in different ways. And I don't know. So it's been something that definitely has opened other avenues and other opportunities for me, just through, again, how much I've loved it, and how
Mhm.
much it can move people. The drums are so powerful in that way, because they're the foundation of music. Almost every song, right? There are songs that don't have drums, but there is not a song without a rhythm. There is
Yes.
not a song without timing, and that is what the drums are. We're not so much a melodic instrument as we are about time, and that time is the foundation of what moves people, and I love that about the drums.
Yeah, and I have so much respect for that, Clint. Um, our audience knows this. You probably don't. My background is as a music teacher, and so
Mhm.
my training was as a professional musician. My instrument is is my voice. So, but in my college career, we, of course, had to work on music theory and so many other things. And I will never forget my music theory classes when I've had to work on, 3 time, 6/8 time in one hand, 2/4 time in another hand, working at the same time. Those things are so difficult. People don't understand that if they're not a musician. And so drummers get it. And you
Yeah.
guys, I don't know how you do it all the time, but the fact that you can do it with your hands and your feet all at the same time and keep it all going and somehow have that happening in your brain all at the same time while your hands are moving, it's mind boggling to me how percussionists can manage all of that. And the fact that you're also doing it with an audience and bringing them along for the story. I love that people don't think of percussion instruments, particularly the drums, as telling a story. They often think of that as something that vocalists do, or maybe even melodic instruments. But you're absolutely right. The drums do bring you along for that, because that's the heartbeat, right? That's the
100,
heartbeat of a human, right?
100%.
Yeah,
100.
yeah. So let's dig into your book. I love it here. Clearly, this is a book that focuses on employee retention, which is one of your areas of expertise, right? And with the huge exodus of teachers that we've been seeing over the past 3 years, it's a topic of real concern in education. It's one of the reasons I'm really excited to be speaking with you today, because I want to get your take on this. So give us a big picture overview of this book, why you wrote it, and how it's structured.
I'm really proud of I Love It Here, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my career, and I'll never write another book again. Because it is so much work. It took me 4 years to write the
Wow.
book, because you have all of the collective research and writing a book that is compelling and engaging and not just regurgitated information that's already out there in the world of leadership and retention was something that I really tried and dedicated so much of my life and time to doing. And I think in doing so, we didn't just create a book that kind of hit the list and disappeared, but a book that is continually a perennial seller. It is a management classic. It is something that is timeless, that
Mhm.
you read it today and you read it 10 years from now, and it will still ring true on, again, like you've mentioned, helping people feel seen, helping people feel understood, realizing that teachers have a life outside of the classroom,
Mhm.
and creating a place ultimately. I think that's why creating a place ultimately where people, specifically teachers, they thought that they could go home better moms, and
Mm.
they go home better dads, and we create better families because of the time that they spend in the classroom at the school. And it is a place of fulfillment. It is a place where when burnout takes place, they have support.
Mhm.
The communication is there. The recognition, all of the things that the book talks about, that the research mentioned, that's the ideal. And the reason why we called it the title that it is, I Love It Here,
Mhm.
was what was so significant, and the foundation to the book is not when I would go in and teachers would say, I just can't wait for summer. I hate my job. I can't stand my principal. Um, but the magic was when I would go into a district or I would go into a school and the educators would, I love it here. It's the best school I've ever been a part of. It's the best
Mhm.
experience I've ever had. I'm, I'm so lucky to do what I do. I love it here. And then
Yeah.
why? Why? What were those administrators doing? What was the culture creating to cultivate that type of a buy in for the educators? And so that's why we titled the book, I Love It Here.
Yeah. Can you give maybe a common thread? I know there are many examples and there are many reasons,
Mhm.
but can you give maybe one common thread that you found, that from the schools that did have that when teachers, because there was something that you said just a second ago that I think I want to highlight. You said that when teachers can go home and be better moms and be better dads because of what they experienced at their school. That is so not typical
Yes.
of what we traditionally hear.
Yes.
Um, so what is a common thread of schools that had that kind of experience?
Yeah.
What are they doing differently?
So much of it stems from the administration.
Mm-hmm.
It stems from the principal. It stems from the vice principal. It stems from leadership. Leadership always is so about 67% of all turnover in education we could transfer back to the principal. We could transfer back to the superintendent. We could transfer back to even sometimes overall control of curriculum, or forcing teachers to just, again, not be creative or to innovate or even connect and love a student in the way that they wanted to, that they were so micromanaged. They were so suppressed in what uh, they wanted to do as educators, that it became a job,
Right,
not not a joy. And
right.
so, if you are a principal or you are an administrator, you're the number one reason why we lose educators in this space. You're also the
Mm.
number one reason why they stay in this space. Well, I will second that to the kids. The kids were always the number one reason why a teacher decided to stay,
Right.
why they continued to do what they were doing, despite a hard or toxic environment with leadership. But aside from that, it was leadership. And
Yeah.
so in our research, there's four types of principals in every
Mhm,
school.
mhm,
We could always tell whether a principal was rocking it or not, creating an environment where people could survive or thrive based off of two things: the standards that a leader had, and their
mhm,
ability to connect. Standards and connection. And the first principle that we found was the removed principle. This is the principle of a leader that was just burnt out, tired, uh, just should have left administration 20 years ago, and they're still there.
yeah.
So they're low on standards. They were also low on connection. It's just another year. Welcome to the school. The more I don't hear from you, the better it'll be.
Yeah.
And so that created disengagement. So all teachers, all faculty, everybody's removed from the principal because the principal is removed from them.
Mhm,
The second was the buddy principal. This is the principal that was really high on connection but low on standards. So they
mhm,
would rather be liked. So they
mm,
wanted everybody to love them. They wanted everybody to. They didn't want to ruffle feathers. They didn't want to, and so it created a sense of entitlement. This is
mhm.
where at times teachers would become more of the administrators than the administrators,
Yes.
because they just wanted to be everybody's friend.
Right.
The third, and sometimes the most common, was the controlling administrator, the
Mhm,
individual that was very high on standards, low on connection,
mhm.
kind of that my way or the highway. Like, be glad you're here. You don't want to be here, go find another school. You want us to love you? No, smile. We give you a paycheck. Tomorrow's going to be worse. Like that
Oh,
kind of a mentality that's just, and so what that created was rebellion. Rebellion.
mhm,
This is where you had teachers, administrators constantly going head to head.
yeah.
But the magic of all of the research, Susan, that we found, and the foundation of really creating a great culture where teachers could be seen, they could be heard, they could be understood, a place where we could create a culture of significance, not just
Mhm,
success, significance.
mhm.
It was founded in what we called the mentor administrator.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
the leader, not the manager, not the administrator, the mentor. This was
Yes.
the individual that was high on standards, but they were also equally as high on their ability to connect. And
Yes.
what did that create in the relationship with the faculty? Respect.
Mm,
They were not always liked, but they were respected. And
yeah.
mentorship was truly the key and the beauty of what our research showed.
Yeah, and I wanted to dig into this because I loved this understanding of the mentor as a leader. So I do have a question because I run into this sometimes with administrators. I work with them a lot. And I have a phrase we work with a lot with administrators called 100% responsibility 100% of the time.
Hmm.
That we take responsibility for our own actions, not anybody else's, but our own 100% of the time. And even if that means that it's a hard look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means that sometimes they have the best of intentions. They don't want to be controlling. They're trying to, they really have high standards for their teachers. They're trying to do the best they can. They're not necessarily trying to be the buddy, but they're trying to have a good relationship. But they fall short in some areas themselves, right?
Hmm.
They may, we're not going to call it incompetence, but we're going to say that they have gaps
Yes.
that maybe they didn't learn in admin school or in their master's programs or wherever, right?
Yeah.
And they're open to mentorship, but perhaps they don't have access to it. Where do those admins fall in this? Because I think this happens a lot, Clint. I think
Yeah.
that admins want to keep their teachers, but they have these gaps and they themselves don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
Um, how do we address those kinds of leaders?
Great mentors were always being mentored.
Mm.
And so creating a tribe of mentors, creating a culture and an environment where superintendents, administrators, even teachers, they have a space and they have people to lean on. The Mr. Jensen that changed my life, he was just a simple ripple effect of the other teachers before him.
Mhm.
Um, there's also, I think that there needs to be a focus on leadership development and
Yes.
leadership training, whether it's specific curriculum, whether it's a book like I Love It Here. We've done our masterclass series that we provide to educators and leadership in education to keep the message alive, to provide ongoing training. Because
Mhm.
sometimes that happens where, they put in their time and they've worked their way up the ranks and they interviewed really well, and congratulations, you're now the principal. You did your training, you got your master's degree, and we just throw them into these positions and say, lead, get it done.
Right.
And the ongoing training, I think, is a key element that needs to happen, uh, both I think in a formal way,
Mhm.
but also in an informal way with key individuals and great mentors that they've had in their life. Sometimes people have said, you should be the leader that you wish you had.
Yeah.
And every time I hear that, I think to myself, no, 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 you should become the mentor that you were lucky enough to have.
Mm.
Who are the great
So
administrators, the great teachers, the great, that made the difference in your life? That is repeatable. That is replicable. We can find great strength and influence from that. And I've seen it time and time again. Great mentors were always being mentored.
absolutely. And I think also leaders don't have to stand alone. There are instructional coaches, there are team leaders
Correct.
and like department heads, right? You can build a leadership team and a mentorship team that you could lean on each other, right? We
Correct.
could still use
Yeah,
those same kind of strategies together. Yeah.
100%. 100%. Yep.
Awesome. So one of my big takeaways from your book was that relationships are really the bedrock, right? The bedrock of everything here, and building those strong relationships across both your working relationships with your peers, your leadership from leadership to teachers, as well as between teachers and students, right? And that taking the time to build those relationships is never a waste of time, even though time is short. So, what are some of your favorite strategies or methods for building those relationships so that people want to stay?
Yeah. So if you're an administrator and you're listening to this, um, every one of your your faculty members, your team members, every one of them is asking you as a leader this simple question. And it's, let me know when this school, let me know when your vision, let me know when this all gets to the part about me so that I can get to the part about the kids. That, and sometimes we hear that as leaders and we think, well, those entitled little shining stars in my life. Like, you know how busy it is on my end. You know everything that I'm having to do. You know everything that the state's requiring. The 15 parents that I've talked to this morning. And I would say it's not so much about entitlement as it is about uh, good leadership and good mentorship. And two things that we have seen is really its potential and worth that great leaders were able to do. How can you communicate the potential and the worth of your teachers? So let's focus on potential first. If I say potential, I want you to think of growth. Growth. How can I grow in my position as an educator? Not just grow up the ladder, not just grow in what I make as an income, but how can I grow as a human? How are you growing teachers, not just employees.
Mhm.
Like again, I've seen many times how districts have created opportunities for growth, from reading books to bringing in speakers to specific training, uh, creating opportunities to listen to teachers to know what they want to grow into. I
Yes.
I had one principal, I'll never forget this. He said, listen, he went to all of his teachers and said, listen, I can't pay you anymore right now. It's just not feasible. Okay, we're paying you a fair wage of what educators are making right now. There's nothing I can do. I also can't necessarily promote you. Like there's unless you want to get on the administration track, you want to go get more school. Like I can't really do much there. He said, but I can help you and your family get out of debt.
Mm.
And he went to every educator that wanted to, and the school provided the opportunity for every teacher to enroll in Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University.
Hmm.
And it was so simple, but to the educators that meant so much. It's like he's trying to help me be a better parent. He's trying to help me be a better me. She's trying to influence me in a way that I get to go home a better mom.
Yeah.
And it was so cool because 19 of the educators in that school, with the support of their spouse and their family, had completely paid off their homes because
Wow.
of that administrator. And I'll
Wow.
never forget that. And here's the thing: some people are listening to this and saying, "Well, Clint, that's a nice idea. Like we don't have a budget for that," or uh, I don't think that would work for us." The hope is though that you listen to that and you think, "What am I doing to create a better person in that classroom? Not just necessarily even a teacher, but just
Mhm.
again, how do we create better people, not just employees?" And so communicating the potential is important. I think a growth development plan, something
Mhm.
to grow into, something to look forward to, something to hope for. Um, are there certain things that an educator can do that merits the opportunity for more money or more flexibility or a different opportunity teaching a different subject or a different whatever it is? I think the administrator has the opportunity to sit down and say, what do you want? What are you looking for?
Mhm.
What do you need? And then
Mhm.
then let me tell you what I'm going to do as your administrator to advocate for that. How can
Mhm.
I want to know how I can walk with you in the pursuit of what matters to you. And then also, what is the educator going to do in this? And then
Mhm.
here's the thing that so many educators miss so often, and it's the follow-up date. It's consistency. We all start the year off on this high energy and all of the dreams and the possibilities, and then mid-year we're just a wreck.
Yeah.
And by the
Yeah.
end of the year, it's like I just have no energy left.
Yeah.
And so, how do we consistently keep the main thing the main thing? And how do your educators, how do your team members know that what matters to them matters to you as the
Yes.
mentor?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
lastly, Susan, just focusing on worth, it's recognition. That's recognition. Recognizing your people. In our research, we found that there's things like vocal praise,
Mhm.
time off, flexibility, Taco Tuesdays, bringing food in, awards, different accolades. Sometimes again, money mattered on how people were recognized. Sometimes we can do it, sometimes we can't. Experiences were
Mhm.
so key. We had a district that the school rallies and creates funding opportunities to send teachers to, it's called Get Your Teach On. It's a massive event that teachers love, and that was a recognition thing that the administration does to send these educators to have an experience. So the point I'm making is there's all these different things, but the number one out of all of it, out of all of the research, was vocal praise. That was the number one thing that teachers just kind of wish they had a little bit more of.
Mhm.
Um, it was also the thing that's crazy to me because it costs an administrator $0 to do
Mm.
that. Like
Yes.
like that a boy, that a girl, keep it up. Like thank you for everything that you do. Um,
Yeah.
I see what you're doing. I see the time and the effort. Just a thank you, vocal
Yeah.
praise. How can we systemize that recognition? To where an administrator can putting their phone every Wednesday. I'm going to take 10 minutes and I'm going to call somebody. I'm going to send an email. I'm going to write a note. I had one administrator that he would find the parents of his teachers, and he would send notes to the parents, just thanking them for the daughter that they raised and the son that they raised, and the good that they are doing in the school and the lives that they are changing. Like, that little act did more for that administrator than anything, calling people on their birthdays. Like,
Yeah,
those small little acknowledgments that I see you, your efforts matter, and you're worth it. You
yeah,
have worth here. I think
yeah.
those are two foundational things that are important: potential and worth.
Amazing. And what you appreciate appreciates, right? So, and one question though around that, what do you tell people who are worried about boundaries when we talk about helping people be better people? And so often administrators are focused on the professional growth goals, following Danielson and making sure that the teachers are hitting their growth targets that the district sets. And I totally agree that people are people. You're not cogs in a wheel. We should help them be the people that they want to grow into. And
Yeah.
so having a personal growth goal there could certainly support them. How do you address people who are concerned about overstepping a boundary in terms of supporting personal goals?
I think it's up to the leader to understand what those boundaries are. Every educator has what I call is a status. They have a status. I spent a lot of time in the medical field. I worked in the OR, and the doctor would always call out and say, "Hey, I need a status update. What's the status of the patient?" Really, what the doctor was asking for is, what are the vital signs, right? The heart rate, respiratory rate, body temperature, and blood pressure. Those
Mm-hmm.
determine whether that patient was okay or not. And so, as someone in the OR, as someone who would help and provide care, we would check the status of the patient. The status would determine how we would treat them. Sometimes patients needed a lot more care. Sometimes they really didn't. And after we would treat the patient in a certain way, we would then recheck the status. And it is not a one size fits all approach in leadership, especially mentorship.
Yes.
And some educators are going to have boundaries, and they're not going to, I don't need an award. I don't need you to tell me every Monday that I'm doing a good job. It's your job as the leader, again, to get to the part about them.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's different, and it's unique. I think that's the hardest part of leadership, and I see it where leaders, they read a book, right, or they take a course, or they uh, took a class in their MBA program, and they try to fit everybody into this mold, everybody into this one size fits all approach, and you just can't do that. And understanding people in a way, to treat them in a way that gets to the part about them, takes time. It takes time. It takes effort. And that's the other thing that I write about in the book is the power of simplicity. Most leaders, most administrators, or even teachers, they're really good at the to-dos, but the most significant teachers were masterful at the to-don'ts. Right? When's the last time in education, instead of a to-do list, you created a to-don't list?
Yes.
I think that, the good teachers, for the most part, they know what you need to do. But
Mm-hmm.
the greatest, most significant educators and leaders were masterful at the things that they needed to stop doing.
Yes, absolutely. And not just teachers. That applies to all of us, I think. Um, Clint, before we go, I always like to ask this question of everyone I have on, because I love to hear the variety of answers. So, from your experience, how can creativity impact education today?
Creativity is the fuel that ignites the ability to dream. And I think more people need to dream. We need to dream more while we're awake. And
So true.
the ability to learn how to cultivate the possibilities of what could be is what's found in creativity, and that
Mm.
fuels dreams. And when kids, teachers, leaders, moms, dads, families have the ability to do more of that, I think we win. That is the foundation of writing a great story.
Mm, wonderful. Well, where can people learn more about you and more importantly, grab your book? I love it here, and all of the good stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. All the places. So there's my website, which is clintpulver.com. The book is available anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any online retailer, and then I'm on all the social media platforms as well. Happy to connect with anybody.
Fantastic. And we will put all of that in the show notes. Clint, thank you so much for joining us today. This was such a wonderful conversation. And thank you for all of the work that you are doing to help everyone stay where they need to stay and also to be inspired to do the work that they are put on this place to do.
Thank you, Susan. It's an honor.